The cabin creaked, a lonely sound. Wind howled outside like a hungry beast. Rain lashed against the windows, blurring the outside world. I sat alone, fire dying in the hearth, a chill crawling up my spine. The silence was unnerving. Each tick of the clock on the wall seemed to echo in the vast emptiness. I tried to read, to distract myself, but the words swam before my eyes. A sense of dread, heavy and suffocating, filled the air. A sudden sound sliced through the silence. A knock. It was so unexpected, so out of place in the stillness of the night. 2 sharp raps on the front door. They echoed through the empty house, each knock reverberating like a gunshot in the quiet. I froze, blood turning to ice in my veins. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the intrusion. My heart hammered in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs. It felt like it might burst through at any moment. Who would come on a night like this? The storm raged outside, wind howling like a banshee, rain lashing against the windows. The knock came again, more insistent this time. It was as if the visitor knew I was inside, hesitating. It felt like a hand reaching out from the storm, cold and menacing. The darkness outside seemed to press in closer, suffocating. I gripped the arms of my chair, fear rooting me to the spot. Every muscle in my body tensed, ready to flee or fight. The rational part of me screamed to stay put, to ignore it, but another part, a more primal part, urged me to confront the unknown. But curiosity, like a moth to a flame, drew me closer. Each step felt like a journey, the distance to the door stretching endlessly. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob, the cold metal sending a shiver down my spine. What awaited me on the other side? Slowly, I turned the knob, the door creaking open with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire house. The light from the hallway spilled into the room, casting long shadows. My breath caught in my throat as I peered into the darkness beyond. The unknown loomed before me, a void filled with possibilities both terrifying and intriguing. Slowly, I rose from my chair, the weight of the moment pressing down on me like an invisible force. The room was dimly lit, shadows dancing on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere that made my heart race. Each step towards the door felt like a mile, my legs heavy with dread. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, the darkness swallowing the light from the room behind me. The floorboards groaned beneath my weight, the sound amplified in the stillness. Every creak echoed through the silence, a reminder of the isolation and the unknown that lay ahead. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob, cold and damp in my grip. The metal felt like ice, sending a shiver up my spine. I hesitated, my breath shallow and quick. Through the frosted glass I could see a shadowy figure. It was indistinct, but its presence was undeniable, a dark blot against the pale glass. Tall and imposing, it stood motionless on my porch. The storm raged around it, but it remained still, an unyielding sentinel in the night. I couldn't make out any features, just a silhouette against the storm's fury. The rain pounded against the windows, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. A wave of dizziness washed over me, my vision blurring as fear tightened its grip. I felt unsteady, the world around me spinning. My hand hovered over the latch, my mind a battlefield of fear and curiosity. Should I open the door and face whatever awaited, or retreat to the safety of the familiar? The decision weighed heavily on me, each second stretching into an eternity. "Hello?" My voice was barely a whisper, lost in the wind's roar. The figure didn't move. It remained there, a silent sentinel shrouded in darkness. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and the figure seemed to shift, to melt into the shadows. Then I heard it, the low, guttural growl, emanating from just beyond the door. My blood ran cold. This was no lost traveller seeking shelter. This was something else, something sinister. I stumbled back, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. Terror lent me a burst of strength. I threw the deadbolt, my hands shaking so violently that I could barely turn the key. As I backed away, the doorknob rattled violently. An inhuman force slammed against the door, making the entire cabin shudder. I scrambled back, my eyes fixed on the door, bracing myself for the inevitable. The wood splintered, the lock gave way with a deafening crack. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the storm, was a creature of nightmares. Its eyes, 2 burning embers, pierced the darkness, filled with a hunger that chilled me to the bone. The forest around me seemed to hold its breath, as if even the trees were afraid to move. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in the silence. It lunged, a blur of claws and teeth moving faster than my eyes could follow. The sheer speed and ferocity of its attack left me paralyzed with fear. I could barely register the pain as its claws raked across my skin, my mind overwhelmed by the primal instinct to survive. I screamed, a primal sound of pure terror as it pinned me to the floor. My voice echoed through the forest, a desperate plea for help that went unanswered. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, everything stopped. The creature vanished, leaving me gasping for breath and drenched in sweat. The storm outside ceased. The wind died down to a whisper. The sudden calm was almost as terrifying as the attack itself, the silence pressing down on me like a physical weight. It was as if the world had been holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Silence descended once more, heavier, more profound than before. The absence of sound was deafening, amplifying the pounding of my heart and the ragged gasps of my breath. It was a silence that seemed to stretch on forever, a void that threatened to swallow me whole. I lay there, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. Every muscle ached, and my mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I could still feel the weight of the creature's presence, a lingering sense of dread that refused to dissipate. Had it all been a hallucination, a figment of my fear-addled mind? The line between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving me questioning everything I had just experienced. My thoughts raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. As I slowly sat up, my hand brushed against something cold and hard lying on the floor beside me. The unexpected sensation jolted me back to the present, grounding me in the here and now. I reached out, my fingers closing around the object. A glimmer of metal caught my eye. It shone faintly in the dim light, a small beacon in the darkness. My curiosity piqued. I brought it closer to my face, trying to make out its details. It was a badge, tarnished and old. The metal was worn and scratched, evidence of a long and storied history. I turned it over in my hand, feeling the weight of its significance. On it, a single word was etched: Sheriff. The letters were faded but still legible, a stark reminder of a past long forgotten. I couldn't help but wonder about the badge's owner and the events that had led it to be here, in this dark and foreboding place.